What's up, crew? It's Chris with CloverTac. Welcome back to the channel. We are here at the Gun Rights Policy Conference 2022. Question of the day is, what is the most significant thing that's happened in 2022 for the advancement of the Second Amendment? Go ahead, drop some of your answers down there in the comments below. We're going to check out what a few of the people here at the conference think. So let's go. So, most significant piece of, or the most significant, I guess, Pro 2A happening or event in 2022, what do you think?
Well, I think it's obviously the Bruin case, or as some, like you like to call it, the INSERPA.
NYSERPA? New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. We got you, though.
Right, sure. Yeah, easily. I also study a lot of constitutional history and constitutional law, and to get us away from those direct scrutiny, tiers of scrutiny, and get us towards, I think, a more constitutional legitimate standard of analyzing whenever the government can and can't infringe on some natural rights or some Bill of Rights, some core rights of Americans. They had the scrutiny tests, which even when I very first learned of them many years ago, I was like, this is kind of bullshit, right? It's like they just made this up. And now that I've learned a lot more about it, of course, that's exactly what it did, is they just made it up. It was a tool that judges made up for judges to use to justify what their decisions are going to be. So we've kind of gotten rid of that, at least in the application of the Second Amendment, and it's going to allow us, as part of Thomas's decision, we now get to use history and tradition, which, to me, forget American history. Any people should be able to guide their future with their history and traditions,
right?
As opposed to somebody on a bench in a robe saying, no, you're going to do it this way now,
right?
Which upsets societies. And so I think that is a much more legitimate way for a judge to make any decision. And so it opens up many roads, because now we've got decisions of the past that can be re-argued under the history and text standard instead of these tiers of scrutiny. So I think we've got a lot of, hopefully, a lot of great days ahead for the Second Amendment. And my hope, I'm way into liberty as much, if not more, as I am into 2A and specifically.
Right.
To get rid of these tiers of scrutiny in other ways is kind of exciting for me too. And the way I read Thomas's words, that's what he's kind of nudging, is we can get rid of these in lots of ways. It's not just the 2A. So I think it's very substantial, very significant in several angles.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I don't remember which one it was, but the EPA decision that came down having to do with Chevron difference or whatever.
Right.
That's got applications. That was the EPA.
Yep.
But that could potentially have applications in the 2A with the ATF. So similar to what you're talking about, with a broader application of those decisions.
Absolutely. I mean, basically my understanding, and I didn't study the Chevron near as much as I did, obviously, the Bruin. But yeah, basically it's saying, you regulatory agencies can't just become mini legislatures of your own. You're going to have to go back to the Congress and get authorization to do this stuff. You can't just go out renegade on your little mission. So that's a gigantic restraint of government. Now, probably what's going to happen is, just like after Heller and McDonald, you had, courts resisting the court decisions and still doing their own thing. So then now you got the Bruin, which is saying, no, get back in your place. You guys can't go off doing your own thing anymore. I guess those regulatory agencies are going to push the borders. They're going to try to figure out where is the border of this Chevron? How's it going to play out for us? But it's a huge step in the right direction. This whole Supreme Court session this year was gigantic, I think, for just the concept of Americanism, freedom, liberty. Because you had and I forgot the names, the coach kneeling on the football field. One, of course, the overturning of Rhode, which, of course, that decision doesn't mean what most people are saying it does either. But in any case, it was a huge win for just liberty.
Right. No, I agree. Appreciate the chat,
yes, sir.
And we'll let you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So the best thing that has happened for the advancement of 2A in 2022, got some answers out there, I think, that have been the same, but they're also a little bit different. What do you think, man?
So obviously, the Bruin case has been amazing. Great, really opens up the ability for other states to get rid of may issue and move to shall issue.
Right.
But one thing that I love more than anything is so many states this year got constitutional carry, and too many to even remember their names, but I love seeing, as someone who's from Los Angeles originally, who got turned down for a permit 8-9 years ago.
Wow.
I now live in Texas, which we got constitutional carry last year, and it's great to see states taking a stand for the Second Amendment and moving back to what the Founding Fathers' original intent was.
Now, when you moved here from California, how long was it before you got your license, if I can ask?
6 weeks.
Really?
Yeah, I moved here and immediately, I think within the first 3 days here, I got an appointment at the DMV, or I always forget what they call it here, but the DMV got a paper permit, or a paper license, if you will. Called the gun place, said, hey, can I use that to take the class? They said, absolutely. I took it, and luckily within 4 weeks, I got my permit in the mail and started carrying immediately.
That's awesome. And you were denied how many times in California?
I was denied once in California, and it was funny. I found out I was denied about 6 weeks before my wife and I decided to move to Texas. So I was kind of bummed out, and then stuff happened. We're like, oh wow, we're moving to Texas in 6 weeks. I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll have my gun permit in 6 weeks.
All right, there you go. And you're right. I mean, there is sort of a correlation, I think, between New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Boy, that's a lot to say. I don't like calling it Bruin, but that, and then to tie into constitutional carry, because a lot of states, Texas was this way. You start out with that permitted process of carry, which you need shall issue for that.
Right, absolutely.
You don't need these extra restrictions and everything else. But once a state can at least get that shall issue, I think what we've seen over the years in a lot of the states you're talking about with constitutional carry is it eventually moves that direction.
Yeah, most of those states that got constitutional carry, no one went from may issue to constitutional carry, but they did go from may issue to shall carry and eventually move to constitutional carry. So I think we're over half now, I think, or just about half, like 25 or 26 states that do have constitutional carry, and I think you will continue to see that number grow.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, man, I appreciate it, and
Absolutely.
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you very much.
All right, as far as the most significant thing that's happened this year for the advancement of the Pro 2A agenda, what do you think?
I would say for this year, the Bruin case I think is going to change the landscape on a lot of things that are going on across the country. And then for Texas, which wasn't too long ago, we ended up 2021, we got constitutional carry passed here. So that was a 10-year fight that finally got passed, which was huge for us.
I was an integral part of that, and I would say much longer than a 10-year fight.
Yeah.
I'd say it'd been going on since the mid-90s or so.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with you on that, yeah.
One of the good things, and GRPC, in case you don't know, this year is in Texas. In case you don't know, Texas legislature meets every other year,
Yep.
which is less opportunity they have to screw things up, which is
Yeah.
nice. But also, when we're talking about something like constitutional carry here in Texas, that also hinders the process when you're trying to move that ball forward incrementally.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword sometimes.
So we have some bills we're writing right now, our legal team's writing to improve the constitutional carry, because really when you look at the bill, we call it constitutional carry, but it's permitless carry.
Right.
There's still a lot of restrictions on it. We just made confirmation last night. I can't say the name yet, but we have a very well-known guy in the country that is going to come to the Capitol during testimony for committee hearings and testify that 18 to 20-year-olds should be allowed to carry, which also matches up with the court ruling the other day of Judge Pittman saying that there's not a declaration of age in the Constitution, so therefore there should not be a restriction for 18 to 20-year-olds for carrying.
Yeah, I mean, and other than the federal prohibition through a licensed dealer 4473, as far as I'm aware, 18 to 20-year-olds can purchase privately a handgun in Texas, can they not?
I believe that's correct, yeah. Yeah, I don't know of any restriction that they can on that, so.
So it kind of makes no sense that they can legally buy, but they can't protect themselves for those that are going to college, for those that, whatever the case may be. It is silly.
Yeah, this particular guy, he's got a lot of attention on him, and he's under 20 years old right now, and he has to look over his back all the time. He will be coming to the Capitol to testify his story, which is, hey, I'm 19 years old and I can't carry a firearm right now because you're telling me this, but yet I have all of these people publicly coming after me right now. So
Right. It's going to be interesting to watch that, of course, and see how it plays out.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it.
And enjoy the conference.
kick it off.
Well, it's already recording.
Yeah, we're going. Yeah, it's not. It's recording, but we're not. Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing that happened this year is obviously the NYSERPA versus Bruin, and I hate.
He said NYSERPA though. You said NYSERPA.
Yes,
we're good.
Here's
A lot of people hate calling it Bruin. You're not alone.
I'm one of them.
You're not alone.
I'm one
You're
of
not
them.
alone.
So that obviously was the biggest thing, but the better thing on top of that, or after that, is all of the fallout afterwards about the 18 to 20-year-olds, about possibly getting rid of the NFA and high-cap magazines and assault weapons and all this nonsense, and calling things what they really are, and the aftermath of are we going to eliminate all of this other stuff? Like, what's the aftermath of Bruin? That
Right.
really seems to be what everyone's excited about, and we're not sure how everything's going to play out.
Yeah, and it may be a while, right? I mean, we know that the lower tier courts, they've kicked a lot of stuff back, and they've said, hey, you've got to rule on this differently, and so now they're kicking the can or the ball down the road like they always do. So
Right, and hopefully when it gets back, hopefully it doesn't get back to the Supreme Court, so they don't have to redecide on what they've already decided, and it's just how do we interpret this, and how is all of this going to play out, and everything going forward.
yeah, I think that's right.
Awesome.
Thanks for the time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
CloverTac, I'm glad you made it, man.
Yeah.
It's always good to see you everywhere.
Yeah, now we gotta go take a ride eventually.
Yes.
So the best advancement, or I guess the biggest advancement of the Pro 2A agenda in 2022, what do you think?
So you don't have to dig that deep. I would say it's the New York State Rifle Pistol Association versus Bruin case, and I want to make a distinction that's very important here. We have the Heller case, we have the McDonald case, and we have the New York State Rifle Pistol Association case. It's not the Bruin case. Bruin should not get any credit for being who he is. So it's New York State Rifle Pistol Association who did this, and those are the people that we need to support because they are liberating people across the country. I am from New Jersey. I have seen carry permits getting issued. They're happening left and right. We do have some bumps and bruises, but what's going on is complete liberation.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I did have a conversation out in the hallway a little while ago with another person. I think she was a lawyer that said there might be some reasoning to calling it Bruin because you take kind of the Wicked Witch, the villain, and you kind of flip it on its head to where now the guy that tried to shut down the 2A, he's going to have his name forever attached to some positive 2A stuff. But historically, like you point out with Heller, right, with McDonald, the winner gets the spoil, so to speak, right? And so I think so.
Well, I think so, but back to your point, just remember it's Dorothy that clicked her heels, and it's Dorothy that said there was no place like home. So it's New York State Rifle Pistol Association, and it always will be for me.
Now, you talk about New Jersey, and obviously, our buddy Big Tony up there doing some good
Tony
work.
does great work.
But so I'm curious about your neighbor over there, honestly, because I'm from Texas. I try not to get into what's going on in other states because I'm not on the ground. I'm not seeing it firsthand. I'm not experienced with the culture and the political landscape. But I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about New York City. Do you know anything that's going on there as far as permits? And the reason I asked is I'm getting conflicting stories. A lot of the mainstream sources are saying that, they're putting up roadblocks, they're not giving out permits, but then I'm talking to some individual people that are like, hey, we've got our permits already, we're good to go.
So there's going to be a distinction if you're talking New York State versus New York City, and you brought up a very important thing. So like New York City is not New York State, but they run it. So that's the issue.
Right.
So it's much like any other state that has big metropolitan areas, large cities. Illinois isn't Chicago, but guess what? Illinois is Chicago. The people from New York City, and actually Dan Wass, who's from New York, might actually be able to answer this question for you better. I know he did do some work on this over at AmmoLand, discussing some of these issues. So I can't really speak for New York either.
Okay, well that's good enough. We'll let you get back and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you, Chris.
So we're talking about the best thing in 2020 as far as 2022. I'm sorry, as far as the advancement of the Second Amendment, and we've had a pretty common answer. I'm sure you're probably going to say that one too, or at least figure out what it is. But I'm going to let you riff on it. You go whichever direction you want with it.
Absolutely. So I think, probably everybody else will be talking about Bruin. I think that's a huge, tremendous win for us. It's, obviously I've opened up the floodgates all in the country. There's all these states that were may issue are now shall issue, right? We're seeing that, California, Hawaii, New Jersey, all these other places. And I guess it's a really, really great thing. One thing I want to think about is how the downstream impact of that, right? So now we're going to have a rush of people trying to apply for permits, which, they shouldn't even have to have a permit under our Second Amendment rights. But one thing to think about is how that potentially makes the kids vulnerable inside the home. So if you're new to carrying a gun and you're exposing your child to a gun because now you have this newfound right under Bruin, the Bruin decision, I do recommend is we're, obviously talk about secure storage with the kids, educate the kids on the importance of what to do if they come across that gun. Like, heaven forbid you have a long day and you left that gun on the counter or something like that, they can be exposed that way. Or maybe if they went to a friend's house for a play date. And so I do advocate that, obviously, with this newfound freedom, right, that is granted to us under the Supreme Court, is make sure that you do whatever you can to educate the kids and normalize your gun in your life. Part of your lifestyle is the gun's going to be on your hip, or depending on how you carry it, it's going to be visible for the child. And so I advocate is just have a conversation with them and understand that this is a tool. It's for their safety. It's not a bad thing. And we got to normalize, lawful gun carrying in our country. I know I'm speaking to the choir here,
Right.
But there's a lot of people out there that don't understand what it is to put a gun on every day to carry it outside of their home.
Right.
I'm very fortunate being from Oregon. Is I'm able to carry a gun for my personal protection pretty much everywhere, unless it's like state or federal property, which is under statute. I can't do that. So, but just educate your kids, teach them that it's a tool, not a toy, and make sure that we protect this new freedom that we just got awarded under the Supreme Court.
Well, the only sticking point I think I got is when you said the new freedom that's awarded. I see this as a right restored.
Oh, good,
Right.
good. Thank you for that.
But where I would take it, in alignment with what you're saying, is that just because we have a right does not relieve us of responsibility. And so part of that is being a safe and responsible firearm owner, a safe and responsible user of the Second Amendment,
Absolutely.
if you would, and that includes keeping the kiddos safe.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. Thank you for that clarification. That was better terminology there. Obviously, we want to prevent governmental intervention, right? So if we're proactive with the way we educate our kids and keep that gun properly stored, we don't need the government coming in and telling us how to do that. Obviously, the Heller decision said that they don't have a right to tell us how to store our firearms. But we want to be proactive because we want to reduce these tragedies, because that's going to help us in the long run.
Yeah, no doubt. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for everything. I appreciate it.
So the question I've got for you out here,
Okay.
as far as the most significant thing, a positive thing, in the advancement of 2A in 2022, what comes to mind?
So I would say that we have to focus the discussion on the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin case with our new standard under which we judge Second Amendment infringements, the one-step test that Justice Thomas laid out for us. Incredible decision. And, we see a lot of kind of the genie out of the bottle, a lot of jurisdictions scrambling to create new sensitive places or prohibited people or prohibited weapons. And I would analogize it to kind of the post-civil rights era and integration where all these jurisdictions, kind of went haywire and they had to get smacked down over and over and over again before they got in line. And so we're going to have about 8 to 10 years of these kind of decisions, and then I think we're going to see some uniformity with gun laws in the United States.
I tend to agree, and thank you for calling it New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, or what was the acronym you mentioned earlier?
New SERPA?
New SERPA, okay, the new SERPA decision. Much better than calling it the Bruin decision. Stop doing that. Yes, I'm wagging my finger, because in what world does the loser get to claim the case?
That'd be the first.
We talk about McDonald, right? We talk about Heller, right? So, it doesn't make any sense.
No, but enjoy the conference. A lot of good folks here. It's good to see all the gun groups playing together, and there's a lot of work to be done, though.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and
we'll see ya.
enjoy the conference.
All right, thanks, y'all.
So the best thing so far in 2022 to happen to the advancement of the Second Amendment, what do you think?
Well, I think you're going to get the answer Bruin from almost everybody.
Well, thankfully, some people have called it in SERPA or New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. There's some people that don't like calling it just Bruin.
It's a lot shorter. It just rolls off the tongue.
It does, but yeah, I don't know. There's an argument for and against that, right?
Sure.
There's an argument to taking an anti-gun, oppressive person's name and slapping it on some Pro 2A stuff.
There's also
right?
a little taste of irony in it.
A little bit.
Something like that.
A little bit.
So-
But either way, whatever it's called, obviously, yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that you're going to see stems from that, and really I think what it's going to come down to is whether the lower courts are faithful to that test. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing in 2022. How do the lower courts act after the Supreme Court has stepped back in and said, this is the test? And it was the test that came out of it. Great for New York for the law being struck down. That's wonderful, but the test is going to have a much more broad application. I think from that you're seeing lawsuits stem up everywhere, and it's going to be litigation, I think, where this is all being fought. The political realm, not my specialty. Obviously, battles are won and lost there all the time.
Right.
Seemingly in a lot of places lost more so than won, but last year you saw a lot of permitless carry being passed, and I think the biggest thing you're going to see in 2022 is going to be more litigation.
Right.
Which I know is not the best answer.
So the lower courts, I mean,
Yes.
they have to test that, take all of that stuff back, and they have to look at it again. I mean, how long do you know? How long can they stall? How long can they hold out? Indefinitely, or does the Supreme Court come back into play?
It's going to depend on what they do, ultimately. Stalling, they can stall as long as they want. There's cases where decisions have taken a year and a half to be issued before, then maybe it goes up on appeal, and then it sits there for another year and a half, 2 years, before maybe it goes up or somebody requests rehearing. So, time-wise, the Supreme Court's not going to be able to step in and say, you need to go faster. It's going to be a results-driven thing.
Yeah, and so I think the lesson to be learned from that is, great decision can have a lot of effect, but be patient with it. Basically.
Yes. Yeah, it's not going to happen overnight.
Awesome. Thanks for chatting for a minute.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
it. So the best thing to happen for the advancement of the Second Amendment in 2022, what do you think?
Got to say the Bruin decision, right? But it's really about how it's being applied so quickly. And one of the great things about GRPC was we got a really good update from Mark Smith about the first 90 days and just all the things that are already starting to happen. And there's always going to be the naysayers. Well, look what happened in New York. They said, okay, we'll give you a permit, but you can't carry a gun anywhere. New Jersey, we'll give you the permit, but we'll give you all the restrictions we can carry. I get it. But let's also look at Delaware. And this hasn't been talked about a lot, but Delaware actually had a court case now where they've said, based on the Bruin decision, we are not going to allow your ban on privately manufactured firearms to stand. There's been an injunction against it, and this is the first time that a court has actually codified that there is a right to build our own firearms protected under the Second Amendment. So I think that's going to be good for the gun building community, which obviously I've been involved in the last couple of years.
You have, yeah.
And so that's one that people need to pay more attention to and go out there and build guns, because there is no ghost gun ban, despite what some of the media said.
Right. And so what I was going to say, I was going to follow up with you on that is, so in light of the whole bogus receiver rule junk, hasn't really slowed things down, it doesn't seem like.
I would say this, it caused a hiccup in the retail market for the gun building kits, because now the idea is you can't get the tools, which are like the jig, the drill bits, maybe some of the screws that hold the jigs together, things like that, the drill guides. You can't sell those the best interpretation we have is you can't sell those with the actual frame precursor. So what we think of as 80% lowers, whether it's receivers, pistol frames, whatever it is. So the market was disrupted, and people are feeling their way through that. But basically what you've got is big companies are starting to come back in, and they're selling the frame precursor and maybe some gun parts with it. So the rails, things like that, pins, maybe even slides and barrels at some point here in the near future. But they're not selling the jigs or the other tools needed to convert, because that's this whole issue of this subjective readily convertible. So right now the best thing we can tell is that the ATF is not going to step in if you're selling the tools. They're not going to step in if you're selling the frame precursors. They're concerned about people selling the frame precursors and the tools together, or colluding yourself. So if we had a business where I said, I'm just going to, everybody that buys a frame precursor from me, I'm going to send you an email, you send them a jig. We can't do that. And again, I think Broom is going to lead to all of this being thrown away, and there's going to be no effect. But the big thing is, Biden, Schumer, mainstream media, when they say there's a ghost gun ban, that they got everything changed, they're wrong. It didn't happen. People are still building guns. In fact, we're about to build some guns over here in a little while. So don't buy into that. They disrupted the market for about 12 days, as far as I can tell, and people are back into it. In fact, there's even a new gun building kit out on the market from 1776 Supply Co. that I just built one of the first ones of a couple days ago. So the death of private gun building was reported early.
Cindy Lou's jumping around. Come here, girl.
Cindy Lou was at her first gun rights policy conference.
Did you have fun?
What was your favorite part? What do you got? Oh,
Running
you got your
around
safe
in the
lesson.
hallways. And,
Might have been that. Now she's going to be
the
shy.
dress probably wasn't the best idea.
Well, she's got shorts on under. She's a big fan of wearing shorts under the dress.
There you go. There
She's
you
very
go.
active.
You have to do that when you're being physical.
Who's your new friend? Oh, you're not going to give her a shout out? You were wearing polka dots, and she got very excited.
Oh,
Baby Cheryl.
her name is Cheryl.
So I think that's
Apparently
gonna
you're
be
4 now.
It's gonna be Cheryl
Hi, I
Todd.
am 7. I am 7. 7.
All right, thanks for being here, man.
Man.